A reading from 1 Samuel chapter 18. Saul and David finished their conversation. After that, Saul's son Jonathan was deeply attracted to David and came to love him as much as he loved himself. Saul kept David with him from that day on and did not let him go back home. Jonathan swore eternal friendship with David because of his deep affection for him. He took off the robe he was wearing and gave it to David, together with his armor, and also his sword, bow, and belt. David was successful in all the missions on which Saul sent him, and so Saul made him an officer in his army. This pleased all of Saul's officers and men. As David was returning after killing Goliath, and as the soldiers were coming back home, women from every town in Israel came out to meet King Saul. They were singing joyful songs, dancing, and playing tambourines and lyres. In their celebration, the women sang, "Saul has killed thousands, but David tens of thousands." Saul did not like this, and he became very angry. He said, "For David, they claim tens of thousands, but only thousands for me. They will be making him king next." And so he was jealous and suspicious of David from that day on. The next day, an evil spirit from God suddenly took control of Saul, and he raved in his house like a madman. David was playing the harp as he did every day, and Saul was holding a spear. "I'll pin him to the wall," Saul said it to himself, and he threw the spear at him twice, but David dodged each time. Saul was afraid of David because the Lord was with David but had abandoned him. So Saul sent him away and put him in command of 1,000 men. David led his men in battle and was successful in all he did because the Lord was with him. Saul noticed David's success and became even more afraid of him. But everyone in Israel and Judah loved David because he was such a successful leader. Then Saul said to David, "Here is my older daughter Merab. I will give her to you as your wife on condition that you serve me as a brave and loyal soldier and fight the Lord's battles." Saul was thinking that in this way the Philistines would kill David and he would not have to do it himself. David answered, "Who am I and what is my family that I should become the king's son-in-law?" But when the time came for Merab to be given to David, she was given instead to a man named Adriel from Mahola. Saul's daughter Michal, however, fell in love with David, and when Saul heard of this, he was pleased. He said to himself, "I'll give Michal to David. I will use her to trap him, and he will be killed by the Philistines." So for the second time, Saul said to David, "You will be my son-in-law." He ordered his officials to speak privately with David and tell him, "The king is pleased with you and all his officials like you. Now is a good time for you to marry his daughter." So they told this to David, and he answered, "It's a great honor to become the king's son-in-law. Too great for someone poor and insignificant like me." The officials told Saul what David had said, and Saul ordered them to tell David, "All the king wants from you as payment for the bride are the foreskins of 100 dead Philistines as revenge on his enemies." This was how Saul planned to have David killed by the Philistines. Saul's officials reported to David what Saul had said, and David was delighted with the thought of becoming the king's son-in-law. Before the day set for the wedding, David and his men went and killed 200 Philistines. He took their foreskins to the king and counted them all out to him so that he might become his son-in-law. So Saul had to give his daughter Michal in marriage to David. Saul realized clearly that the Lord was with David and also that his daughter Michal loved him. So he became even more afraid of David and was his enemy as long as he lived. The Philistine armies would come and fight, but in every battle David was more successful than any of Saul's other officers. As a result, David became very famous. The word of the Lord. A reading from 1 Samuel chapter 19. Saul told his son Jonathan and all his officials that he planned to kill David. But Jonathan was very fond of David, and so he told him, "My father is trying to kill you. Please be careful tomorrow morning. Hide in some secret place and stay there. I will go and stand by my father in the field where you are hiding, and I will speak to him about you. If I find out anything, I will let you know." Jonathan praised David to Saul and said, "Sir, don't do wrong to your servant David. He has never done you any wrong. On the contrary, everything he has done has been a great help to you. He risked his life when he killed Goliath, and the Lord won a great victory for Israel. When you saw it, you were glad. Why then do you now want to do wrong to an innocent man and kill David for no reason at all?" Saul was convinced by what Jonathan said and made a vow in the Lord's name that he would not kill David. So Jonathan called David and told him everything. Then he took him to Saul, and David served the king as he had before. War with the Philistines broke out again. David attacked them and defeated them so thoroughly that they fled. One day, an evil spirit from the Lord took control of Saul. He was sitting in his house with the spear in his hand, and David was there playing his harp. Saul tried to pin David to the wall with his spear, but David dodged, and the spear stuck in the wall. David ran away and escaped. That same night, Saul sent some men to watch David's house and kill him the next morning. Michal, David's wife, warned him, "If you don't get away tonight, tomorrow you will be dead." She let him down from a window, and he ran away and escaped. Then she took the household idol, laid it on the bed, put a pillow made of goat's hair at its head, and put a cover over it. When Saul's men came to get David, Michal told them that he was sick. But Saul sent them back to see David for themselves. He ordered them, "Carry him here in his bed, and I will kill him." They went inside and found the household idol in the bed and the goat's hair pillow at its head. Saul asked Michal, "Why have you tricked me like this and let my enemy escape?" She answered, "He said he would kill me if I didn't help him escape." David escaped and went to Samuel in Ramah and told him everything that Saul had done to him. Then he and Samuel went to Naioth and stayed there. Saul was told that David was in Naioth in Ramah, so he sent some men to arrest him. They saw the group of prophets dancing and shouting with Samuel as their leader. Then the Spirit of God took control of Saul's men, and they also began to dance and shout. When Saul heard of this, he sent more messengers, and they also began to dance and shout. He sent messengers the third time, and the same thing happened to them. Then he himself started out to Ramah. When he came to the large well in Seku, he asked where Samuel and David were and was told that they were at Naioth. As he was going there, the Spirit of God took control of him also, and he danced and shouted all the way to Naioth. He took off his clothes and danced and shouted in Samuel's presence, and lay naked all that day and all that night. This is how the saying originated, "Has even Saul become a prophet?" The word of the Lord.